Okay, so let me see. I'm gonna have to restart my software. That is crazy. Testing. You got me? Let me try this again. You should have sound now. Testing. No, it can't be that. Properties. Testing. Do you hear me now? You guys got me? Everything's coming through? Okay, I have no idea what happened there. I rebooted the machine. Yeah, just to be on the safe side. I'm so sorry. Good grief. Yeah, always one thing or another. Excellent. Yeah, sorry about that. So guys, welcome. Thank you for being here. Today we're going to be talking about, of course, Hitler versus Christianity. So this is looking at Hitler's own writings, as well as looking at what the people around him said. So we're looking at his secretary, whom we have here on the screen. We're looking at all of the people who worked for him, the people in the Nazi administration, everything that they've said, right? Because, again, we want to look at and we want to test the validity of the claim by atheists and Muslims and others that Hitler was a Christian. Are they trying to say he's a practicing Christian? Remember, if he was a practicing Christian, they need to show he went to church, that he was constantly speaking well of the church, speaking about the Bible, and we have no evidence of that. Yes, Allah works in mysterious ways, guys, as you know, and Allah seems to affect the microphone the most often. James Alexander, welcome. Yeshua, hey, welcome. All right, FP, and yeah. Okay, so guys, where do we begin? Right, so hopefully the premise makes sense. Everything that I've said so far makes sense. Please let me know, are you finding this information of a nature that you can actually use it? Have you used it? Are you using it in social media to take screen captures or whatever the case might be, but telling people, hey, look, this is not true, here's the evidence, and asking them the difficult questions that I am trying to post. Like, show evidence that Hitler went to church, right? When did he stop going to church? Because if he was a devoted Christian, he would be going to church. He'd be speaking positively, right? So, yeah. And let me know if this is actually helping you to bolster your own faith, as it were. Because that's something that I need to know, that this is helping you. All right, let me continue. So we ended just after this on the last show. That's his secretary, right? That's her over there. And she wrote this book, He Was My Chief, or He Was My Boss, Er war mein Chef. The Memoirs of Adolf Hitler's secretary, Christa Schröder. There's an internet source that claimed Hitler's mother or grandmother was raped by a Jew, making him 1/4. Dude, I think that's just an internet claim. I mean, yeah, people are just going to say whatever. All right, so we've discussed this already, right? But she tells us that Hitler's monologues were primarily about the problem of Christianity. So Metaphysical Joker, can you tell us a little bit about how it's helping you? Just drop a few comments if you don't mind, as to how it actually helps you. What difference it is making for you. All right, now, Hitler's secretary found Hitler's religious comments illuminating, she said, as he exposed the deception and hypocrisy of Christianity, right? Villainous says, plenty peeps go to church nowadays or Christians keep the door open. Well, yeah, but lots of bad Christians, or shall we say non-Christians, enter the church to destroy it. Understand, this does happen, right? Wolves in sheep's clothing. And she tells us, as do his colleagues and acquaintances, his friends, he tried to palm himself off as a Christian when it served his political purpose. But none of his friends and comrades considered him a Christian. So, yeah. All of his close associates agreed with her, testifying that he was antagonistic towards Christianity. So, we covered this slide, then we went to the Moses slide, which is where my internet connection died. So Hitler would not allow interracial marriages. We've discussed this in terms of apartheid, right? And we went through this, so I'm just going to skip forward now. St. Paul, Jews, and Moses. So Hitler's new positive Christianity, this new religion that they dreamt up, which was a heretical form of Christianity, described the Nazi version of Christianity. Christianity had to be stripped of its Jewish roots and made compatible with Nazi ideology. And we know the two are absolutely not. So Metaphysical Joker says, connecting the dots in a sense with Christian paganism and other pagan occultism and the desired connection of all pagans to be the Antichrist. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Yeah. By the way, yesterday, someone who's been a long-time viewer of the channel who recently started to make some really strange comments. They repeated a comment which they had made before. I posted a short video on LGBT, atheism, Satanism, and the convergence between these. And he left a comment saying that I should stop doing things which are divisive. I shouldn't do politically divisive videos, and I should just stick to Islam. Now, I just found that a little odd. If you're a Christian, you might be a little bit concerned about the fact that Satanism is making a public resurgence. So yeah, I just found this really odd, how it's divisive for someone to talk about an issue that Christianity is actually literally making a commercial public exposure. So yeah, that was a little odd. So yeah, not everyone is your friend. Not everyone's a good Christian. Did he say that Christianity was weak? Yeah, Hitler made lots of negative statements, as we've seen through the episode so far. You touch on all-round topics, so I can clearly see these occult connections of Europe to the occultism and paganism from parts that I am from, and how they're all connected. Yes, excellent. Sounds like the Pope's planers, yeah. Yeah. So is that the guy I was discussing? This is a long-time subscriber. It's just really weird. Oddly weird. Yeah, I mean, one of the prime, I'd say, verses is that the hatred of evil is the love of God, right? There's a verse very similar to that. So if you are speaking of evil and you are calling it out, how is that divisive? How is that un-Christian? I find that really strange. Yeah, so let me continue. Hitler rejected the writings of Paul, right? So Christianity needed to be stripped of all Jewish influence. The Nazis believed that Jesus was not Jewish, but Aryan, like the Nazis, that he fought against Judaism, that he was a warrior. Hitler believed that Jesus had been fathered by a Roman soldier, which gave him his Aryan blood. Now, people will say, well, that he got that from the Talmud, from the Jews. Well, actually, the Jews got that from the Romans, because the Romans used that to insult Jesus. The Romans were very good at insulting Jesus too, right? So Hitler rejected the writings of Paul. But then again, the odd thing is you don't see anyone bashing the Romans for insulting Jesus, but you see people will take time out of their day to insult the Jews, smear the Jews, lie about the Jews, but you don't see anyone being offended that the Romans did it. It's like, hey, the Romans were awesome. They can insult Christ all they want, but the Jews, oh my God, we got the Bible from the Jews. Jesus was a Jew. Most of the apostles were Jews, but damn it, those Jews are bad. Understand? There's a little bit of an odd disconnect and hypocrisy there. Right. So he rejects the writings of Paul. Paul, according to the words of Hitler, was a sneaky Jewish rabbi who imported Jewish ideas and thus corrupted Christianity. So Jewish ideas corrupted Christianity. So in other words, Christianity has nothing to do with Judaism. Now, I've heard quote-unquote Christians say this. I've heard Vox Dei say this. To say Judeo-Christian is the same as saying Satano-Christian. He says it makes no sense because Jews have no connection whatsoever to the Bible and to Christianity. Now, I would say that is like saying water has no connection to making you wet. When you dive into a pool, the water has no connection to making you wet. That is obviously historically false, and that's one of the reasons that I absolutely question anything Vox Dei says. Hitler believed that Apostle Paul virtually invented Christianity in order to undermine the Roman Empire. So Christianity was created as a social movement, as a toxic social movement designed to destroy the government. He expounded the identity of Judaism, Christianity, and Bolshevism. So he compared it to the Bolshevism of Lenin by references to Isaiah 19 and Exodus 12. So Christianity is Russian Bolshevism. He claimed that the Jews had been expelled from Egypt because they had tried to produce a revolutionary mood by inciting the rabble with humanitarian phrases, just as they do here in Germany. Now, Valina says, what is it with the Paul bashing? Well, let's see. We know a certain religion likes the color green, and it has a guy called Mo at the top, and they have a lot of bad things to say about St. Paul. So ask yourself, where could he have gotten these ideas? Again, nothing to do with Islam, right? So Patrick Dunyan, hi folks, new sub from Scotland, here to learn and broaden my horizons. Well, thank you, and very welcome, Patrick. Yeah, thanks for showing up, and thanks for, well, chat away. So Hitler would have been the first to condemn Jesus, the Jew. That is true, so therefore they had to rebrand Jesus. Don't forget, Jesus, as we all know, is a Muslim. Jesus is also a Jehovah's Witness. Jesus is also a Mormon, right? And I'm sure we can go on with that list as long as we have to, right? So don't forget, Jesus is anything but what he says in the Bible. Hitler believed that Apostle Paul virtually invented Christianity, and he claimed that the Jews had been expelled from Egypt because they were trying to create revolution. And from this it followed that Moses was the first leader of Bolshevism. Right, so Paul was attacked even in the early church, yeah. So wolves entered into the church early on. So Moses was the first leader of Bolshevism. So, St. Paul, Jews, and Moses. Now look at this. Here they've taken a church. Here they've got the crucifix. And they have Nazified it. Hitler saw the Jews as grotesque projections of everything that he hated, right, and that he craved. And he believed that the Jews were striving for world domination. And Hitler wanted world domination. Hitler argued that the Old Testament already provided the pattern of the Jewish assault upon the Aryans, the superior creative race, a pattern repeated again and again and again down the ages. So he's here playing the victim card. The Jews have destroyed my people. There's a religion that's always playing the victim card, that you're being Islamophobic. So Hitler is playing the very same card, oddly enough. He was highly aware of the propaganda value of his anti-Semitism, but over and beyond such Machiavellian considerations, he genuinely believed his thesis. It was complete fantasy, but they believed it. The claims made by Christians, he said, by atheists and Muslims who hate Jews today, are literally Hitler's arguments. When you look at the quote-unquote Christians, atheists, and Muslims who speak ill of Jews, you'll find that these arguments are similar to Marx, Hitler, and sometimes verbatim, sometimes the very same arguments, word for word. So these are the arguments of Lenin, Stalin, Mao, Pol Pot, Hitler, you name it. Ask yourself, if these people, how are they Christian if they are literally word for word repeating Hitler, word for word repeating Stalin? Right? So let's continue. Guys, we're not going to get... Okay, for all of my mods, if anyone gets into a whole church bashing issue, contest, even if you have to, like... Even if you're not entirely certain, just time them out. Because I'm not going to get into a whole Catholic versus Protestant story right now. Okay? I don't want that. Let's stick to the topic. If you believe and promote what Hitler believed, then that makes you a Nazi and a follower of Hitler. Don't forget, atheists call themselves scientific atheists. They do scientific atheism, which is what Marx and Engels called their ideology, what Lenin and Stalin called their ideology. Why the atheists borrowing the same name for the same ideology and then repeating the very same anti-Christian propaganda? Understand. Sandro Correa, welcome. Check Fridtjof Schön as disciple of René Guénon. He was the main influence of Prince, now King Charles, to Islam through a tariqah. Interesting. Okay. Right. Now, if the Jew did not exist, Hitler remarked, we would have had to invent him a visible enemy, not just an invisible one, is what is needed. In other words, they needed someone to attack, someone to focus their hatred on. So, in other words, he had a political motive as well. They needed an enemy, something to focus the anger, the despair of the German people on. Yeah, BS. It's complete BS. It's basically science, right? Right, Muhammad is a man after Hitler's own heart. So true. And remember, this is very similar to what Voltaire said. If God did not exist, we would have to invent him. But these atheists, as I've covered in my atheism series, they would have to invent God that served their political and social purposes. And that's what he meant when you look at the wider context of his statement, when you look at more of what he said, rather than just take those few words. All right, now, this is from Cambridge Core, and you can find other resources on this. Nazifying Christian Theology, Walter Grundmann and the Institute for the Study and Eradication of Jewish Influence on German Church Life. And in the Third Reich, they had a Kirchenkampf, or the church struggle. Now, what's interesting, notice the word struggle. Who's heard of another word in another religion that constantly calls a certain term struggle? drop the word, starts with a J, into the chat if you guys know what it is. Why is it that Mein Kampf, to kämpfen, is to fight? Why is it constantly translated as struggle? Right? Struggle. It's jihad is warfare. Jihad is violence. Mein Kampf is my fight. Why are they translating as, my struggle? It's such an odd thing. They do the same thing with Islam, and they do the same thing with Hitler. Yeah, jihad. Exactly. So, jihadi Adolf. Precisely. It's my jihad. Now, why would they constantly mistranslate it as struggle, just as they do with Islam? Apologists are writing these things. Understand? So, yeah. So, Nazifying Christian theology. So, they Nazified Christian theology. So, how many times are we going to have to hear that this is a heresy? How often are we going to have to deal with people saying he was a Christian? The Nazis literally believed they were Christians, just like Muslims will tell you, we are the real Christians. They believe they're Christians. They have nothing to do with Christianity. They are the inverse, the opposite, the rejection of Christianity. And so the Nazis, they literally believed they were Christians by completely stripping Christianity of everything that was Christian and then just taking the carcass and putting their crazy ideology inside it. Yes, and Joel Thomas, you are correct. No wonder these Momo worshippers love Hitler. Look at my series on the Palestinian occupation of Israel, and I talk about that in much greater depth. Panzerkampfwagen, armored fighting cars. Yeah, it's not armored struggle cars. Thank you, Eric, and that's a really good statement. Yeah, it's not armored struggle cars, it's armored fighting vehicles. Okay, yeah, so guys, if you do like this, please share. Remember, what I'm trying to do is, one, I'm trying to go against arguments that attack the Christian faith, that are historically unsound, that are completely false, that are made up lies, that are propaganda. Two, I'm trying to attack this from an angle by providing information that is not an angle that people are familiar with. I'm providing the evidence that everyone else somehow overlooked. I'm not providing the common information that is readily out there, that is a very partial, heavily biased view. I'm trying to provide deeper research and to provide everything else on the other side that balances that scales, that is information that ultimately proves that what we know as the common narrative is not true, is not false, is not believable. Yes, amazing how Islam, social democrats, and now the LGBT all take Jesus for their own. Of course, you're hearing it now. Jesus was gay. Jesus was a lesbian. Jesus was huh? No. Right? So, Nazifying the German Church, founded in 1939, the Institute for the Study and Eradication of Jewish Influence on German Church Life, very big mouthful of a name, sought to redefine Christianity as a Germanic religion, right? Whose founder, Jesus, was not a Jew, but rather an opponent, an enemy of the Jews. He fought valiantly to destroy Judaism, but fell in that struggle, right? So, the Nazified Deutsche Christen, or the German Christians, these are Nazified German Christians, they sought to introduce National Socialist policies and ideology into the church, especially the Nazi racial laws. And they wanted to modify church doctrine in accordance with National Socialist ideology. So the new church was a fusion of the Protestant Church and National Socialism. The Bible was a Jewish text, and therefore it was not compatible. Now, this is largely the Old Testament. Was not compatible with their ideology. The Old Testament had to go. Logic does prove Christianity, because if you look at the Greek, God is logos, right? If you look at the opening, look at John 1, God is logos, right? The world is reasonable. God is logic, right? Now, so the new church was sadly a fusion of the Protestant church, the German Protestant church, and their theologians worked to prove, and these are sadly a whole number of Protestant theologians assisted the Nazis to try to alter the Bible, to alter Christian theology, to make it utterly compatible with National Socialism, with their racist agenda. So their theologians worked to prove that Jesus was not born to Jewish parents. They were literally rewriting history, but to Armenian parents. They also claimed that the Jew Paul had perverted Christ's teachings. So this, unfortunately, Protestants, you got to own this one, right? And again, I come from the Anglican Church, and the Anglican Church has gone insane. So the message of God. Now, they wrote a brand new New Testament. They never called it the Bible. They called it the message of God. Die Botschaft Gottes. Right? Now, this is a heavily edited version of the New Testament produced by the German Christians, Protestant clergy and theologians that was sympathetic to National Socialism wrote this. You'll also see the term Volkes Testament, the People's Testament. Right? So, it presented an Aryanized Jesus at war with Judaism, purged of any Old Testament references, culling or removing, stripping crucial sections of the Pauline epistles. So they were stripping Paul out of the Bible. It retained some interesting passages of the New Testament that may strike readers as very, very odd when you see them, when interpreted considering prevailing ideas surrounding racial hygiene and Darwinian evolutionary theory. Right? So they wanted to align all of this with Darwinian evolutionary theory. There's a very strong correlation with Darwin and Hitler and Darwin and Marx. Join the Global South. I have no idea who all these people are, to be quite honest. And I've actually been looking at a lot of... Remember I did the series on Thomas Aquinas, right? And rationalism. And what is odd is that I've been reading a lot about Luther and people's views on Luther's views, right? And I must admit, I'm not believing much of what I'm reading from Protestant theologians. I'm generally not buying it. But Luther was very much anti-scholastic. He was anti-rationalist. In fact, he reminded me very much of Muslim literalist scholars in the Sharia, right? That's the point that I'm getting here. And then also, someone tried to make a comment to me today about a scholar called Richard Muller, who wrote a lot about Protestant scholasticism. And Luther effectively rejected scholasticism, and then you see other people coming along saying, well, actually Luther did not, and blah, blah, whatever. But he tried to say that this Protestant scholastic theology is really great for founding theology upon and deriving theological views and arguments. And then I went to look at what this scholar actually wrote, and the guy said something completely different. I read his paper. I went to get his paper, looked at his paper. The guy contradicts those statements completely. Now, I'd hate for someone to come to me and you know, were you wrong? Was it... Who knows? Okay, I'm not going to make any accusations here, but let's just say the story that I was getting was completely and utterly contradicted in the statements of the scholar that I read. And then on top of that, the odd thing is that the Protestant theology is equivalent to seems to me to be equivalent to the Muslim adab al-jadal, which is their form of disputation, which is their form of rhetoric, which they use in debate. This is designed not to find truth, but to win an argument, to undermine the opponent, undermine their arguments, and to win using rhetoric and sophistry. So that was really odd. This is a take on the Muslim way of arguing to lie, and this was taken into Protestantism as an entire science, if you will, of how to argue. That is very disturbing, and they're claiming that this is scholasticism. This is not scholasticism. This is in English it's called eristic. Eristic is when you are using disputation, you are arguing, you are argumentative, but also it means using specious logic. For me, that's a problem. So I've been looking at that, and that's something I'll be talking about in the future. Your thoughts on that? I mean, you know that I speak very plainly. I say what I think, and your thoughts on that. But the more that I dig into history and the more that I dig into the Protestant Church, the more I am smelling a rat. Honestly, I am just seriously starting to smell a rat. Adab al-Jadal. Let me show you here. Adab al-Jadal. In English, you know it as heuristic. Adab al-Jadal. Yeah, Taqiyya has got its own thing going on. This all falls now. You see, Taqiyya is just one of many, many forms of deceit. It's the one that they can morally justify. And in fact, Islamic deceit falls under the name Hiyal. This is the Hiyal is where we want to look for Islamic deceit. So, yeah. So these are people trained to dispute, trained in argumentation, disputation. And this is exactly what the Protestants did. And my brain is telling me they stole this from the Muslims. So yeah, I'm very concerned. This bothers me. I know I'm going against centuries of tradition. I'm going against lots of top theologians, but honestly, I read Protestant theologians and I'm like, ooh, that doesn't smell so good. That's what I'm getting out of a lot of their stuff. So yeah. Okay, but be that as it may. So look, I know I do lots of I say controversial things, and I do lots of contentious issues on the channel, but that's just how that is. All right, so now let's continue. So the Volkes Testament inclusion of the Sermon on the Mount is the most glaring display of cognitive dissonance between Nazi ideology with Christian ethical teaching. Right? Justified deceit, exactly, everywhere, LOIs. So the odd thing is that this new Bible, that they never called it a Bible, right? But this new message, don't forget the message, they called it the message of God, right? Included the Sermon on the Mount, and the Sermon on the Mount is supposedly somehow an anti-Jewish message, a message talking about racial superiority. So understand, these people were literally suffering from massive cognitive dissonance. They honestly believed they were preaching the message of Jesus, that they were the real Christians. They believed them. They drank their own Kool-Aid. The German Christians believed that supporting the political and cultural revolution symbolized by National Socialism was an extension of Christian duty. They believed that Nazism was a Christian duty. This is insane. To be a Nazi was to be a Christian by very definition. To be a Christian was to be a Nazi, and to be a Nazi was a Christian. This was the Nazi belief in Germany. So understand, Jesus was a Muslim, right? So the mission of the church became one of cultivating a vibrant and resilient folk community, as well as offering religious legitimization of Nazi ideology. And these Protestant theologians went out of their way to make sure that their version of theology, of Christian theology, was compatible with Nazi ideology. All right. James Alexander. Great comment. Yeah. Okay, so Crystal 711 says, and I agree, it's a manipulative way of arguing without facts. Yes, it is a manipulative way. Patrick Dunyan says, my 2 cents observation: in Germany, the Nazis' plan was to continually promote a lie to allow for a demagogue to become popular and gain user power. Well, yeah, I mean, they were lying. They were happy to lie. They might not have even realized they were lying. They were so deep into their own ideology. I've met Desmond Tutu twice. He was a friend of my grandfather. I've met him twice, and he in fact was the assistant priest at my uncle's wedding. So Desmond Tutu, he's a friend of my family. Okay, so the German Christians denied that there was any possibility for relationship building based on a shared identity in Jesus Christ as the ultimate symbol of unity. I'll repeat that. These German Christians denied that there was any kind of possibility of unity between Christians and of relationship building based on a shared identity with Jesus, because their Jesus was not your Jesus, right? Because Christians thought, okay, look, Jesus Christ is the ultimate symbol of unity that overrides amongst the Christian denominations, that overrides any other differences. And they were like, nope, your Jesus is wrong. Our Jesus is right. You've got the Jewish Jesus. We've got the right one. Okay? The obvious outcome of this segmentation was the eradication of the concept of a global faith. There was no one Christian faith, because just remember, you had socialism, right? You had the Comintern, international communism under Marx and his followers. And then you had national Nazi socialism, right? National communism, if you will, which was nation-based, race-based, right? So they believed that each nation and its people were a self-contained theological universe, and they were following the Aryan theological universe, and you were not part of that theological universe. So is all this making sense so far? Okay, so I'm also trying to keep up with the comments, but lately the comments section has become very much more lively, so it's much, much harder to keep up with the comments. Right, so now Julius Streicher, right? Lucifer and the Nuremberg trials. All right, so Julius Streicher was a Nazi propagandist. He published an anti-Semitic newspaper called Der Stürmer. Right, and I got this from the Yale Law School, the Lillian Goldman Law Library, and the Avalon Project. Actually, in more than one occasion, I've gotten documents. Avalon Project, they've got some really great documentation, legal documentation on, from the UN or from like the Nuremberg trials. So I've used them on more than one occasion to go find documents and search through their documents. Really, really useful site. Glad to know, guys. Thank you. Because look, I mean, I need your feedback to know that I'm not just, I'm not pulling a ancient aliens on you. Understand? So, during the deposition in Nuremberg, during the trial, right? Nationalkommunismus, exactly. Yeah. All right, let's see. He's asked by the lawyer, witness, what aims did you pursue with your speeches and your articles in Der Stürmer? This was on 29 April 1946. Streicher says, the speeches and articles which I wrote were meant to inform the public on a question which appeared to me one of the most important questions. I did not intend to agitate or inflame, but to enlighten. Streicher. Anti-Semitic publications have existed in Germany for centuries. So this Nazi, right, says that anti-Semitic publications have existed in centuries for Germany. Why? A book I had, written by Dr. Martin Luther, was, for instance, confiscated. Dr. Martin Luther would very probably sit in my place in the defendant's dock today in Nuremberg if this book had been taken into consideration by the prosecution. Right, so this is interesting. One of his main inspirations, this Nazi propagandist who ran a newspaper called The Stormer, said that one of his main inspirations was the holy, righteous inventor of Christianity, Dr. Martin Luther. Right, and he says Martin Luther would have been in the Nuremberg trials if Martin Luther had been alive then. So, because you guys have no idea. You've heard me say things, but man, you have no idea how bad it gets with Martin Luther. The story that is told about Martin Luther and the story that really is Martin Luther are two vastly different things. The man was, I'm going to lose my cool talking about that guy. In the book, The Jews and Their Lies. So in the book, The Jews and Their Lies, Dr. Martin Luther writes that the Jews are a serpent's brood and one should burn down their synagogues and destroy them. Okay, so actually, no, maybe I should go again just to reinforce this point. Okay, this is a very small sampling. This is not a major sampling. Okay, this is Martin Luther. These are woodcuts and other prints and other impressions and also there were statues all over and carvings. Martin Luther said the worst possible things. He would say that the Jews, you see here, the reason that this Jew is lifting up the tail of this pig is because Jews eat the thing that comes out of the back of the pig. And they eat as much as their stomach can hold until it's coming down out of their cheeks, down their over their lips and down their throat, dripping off their beards, because the Jews like what the pig releases out of the rear. Do you understand? This was Martin Luther. Now, here's another thing. There was someone who constantly was saying, Lloyd, the reason that Martin Luther would constantly use references to excrement, constantly talk about farting, constantly talk about eating excrement, eating excrement, was that Martin Luther was trying to compare the holiness of Jesus with the ugly reality of normal humans who are so sinful. If I had to say that a particular group of people literally, excuse my French here, but they eat shit. They eat pig shit and they can't get enough. And the pig is pooping and they are just gobbling it down until it fills their stomachs and they are ravenously. This is not Luther trying to compare the human condition with the glory and the goodness of Christ, because the last I checked, St. Paul didn't speak this way, and Luther went out of his way to speak like this. The man was foul. Okay? Martin Lucifer, yes, was obsessed with poop of all kinds. Understand, the man was disgusting. Right? So here you've got a pig that is, doing a favor for the dude, and here you've got a guy that's helping himself. This is in Germany. Okay? And of course, Luther stated, now every anti-Jewish book printed in Hitler's Third Reich contained references to and quotations from Luther. And of course, he stated bluntly, set fire to their synagogues and to their schools, and bury and cover with dirt whatever will not burn. This is to be done in honor of our Lord Jesus and of Christendom, so that God might see that we are Christians. Okay? I advise that their houses be burned and destroyed. That's Martin Luther on the Jews and their lives. And of course, Luther says on his deathbed, Jews were dogs. We are at fault for not slaying them. So I don't know if anyone would like to say, do you agree with Luther that Jews should be killed, should be murdered, raped, have their possessions destroyed, have their houses burned, buried, and that they should all be murdered? Just let me know, as Protestants, right? As Protestants, do we agree? Do you agree with Luther? And do you believe that someone who spoke like that is a wonderful, righteous, moral example who founded the Protestantism that you follow today? Oh, by the way, I forgot. Sorry. Luther has nothing to do with Protestantism anymore, just like Muhammad has nothing to do with Islam. Yes. Yeah. Remind me about that later. Again, I'm going to repeat this. Okay. He says here, he says this: the devil has emptied his stomach again and again. Now he's talking about poop, okay? The devil poops. And the Jews and those who want to be a Jew kiss, eat, and drink and worship. He stuffs and squirts them so full that it overflows and swims out of every place. Pure devil's filth. Yes, it tastes so good to their hearts, and they guzzle it like sows, okay? And yeah, and also Luther then says, come here, Satan, and if you had more worlds than this, I would accept them all and not only worship you, but also lick your behind. Right, so this is Luther, but this is holiness, right? This is great holiness. This is incredible. Yeah, this is just fantastic. I mean, I don't think any of us could strive to be as holy and as righteous as this. Right, now, and also, by the way, I'm a little touchy about this, so yeah, if anyone's going to go any Jew bashing, I am going to ban you. That's it. Don't even ask. It's going to happen. So, in the book Jews and Their Lies, Dr. Martin Luther writes that the Jews are a serpent's brood and one should burn down their synagogues. The book Trust No Fox in the Field and No Jew Under His Oath was done and illustrated by a young woman artist, and she also wrote the text, the title of which appears on the picture book is that of Dr. Martin Luther, because Dr. Martin Luther wrote the book Trust No Fox in the Field and No Jew Under His Oath. In other words, they will lie to you, they will break all their oaths, right? How do Lutherans react? Well, Luther suddenly becomes unimportant to Protestantism. Luther has nothing to do with Protestantism, I've discovered. And that others would have done it. Luther was the father of Protestantism, just, had nothing to do with Protestantism. And really, their beliefs have nothing to do with Luther. They don't follow a man. That's why they're not called Lutherans. And yeah, even though they just read their Bible, which Luther said, that they're not listening to Luther at all. So yeah, that's what I'm hearing. Okay, right, Lucifer, Wittenberg, 1543. The Jews and Their Lies, written in 1543, 3 years before his death, closely followed by another anti-Semitic treatise, von Shem Hamforas, on the ineffable name. Oxford historian Lyndall Roper summarizes the content of these two works in our highly acclaimed biography, Martin Luther, Renegade and Prophet. The Jews, he alleges, look for biblical truth under the sow's tail. So the Jews are trying to find religious truth under the sow's tail. In other words, in the pig's ass. Okay? That is, by their interpretation of the Bible, comes from looking into a pig's anus. So, the last I checked, Jesus was a Jew, right? But Luther seems to disagree. The apostles were Jews. Paul was a Jew. I could be wrong here, unless they were Buddhists from Japan. I don't know, but maybe I'm wrong. And they defame Christian belief, impelled by the devil to fall into this like filthy sows fall into the trough. If they see a Jew, Christians should throw sow dung at him and chase him away. So, according to Luther, if you do see a Jew, throw pigs droppings at him and chase him away. Which obviously is Luther just trying to make a distinction between the glory of Jesus and how virtuous Jesus is, and just how, man is not on that level. That's all he's trying to do. It's entirely metaphorical. Although personally I look at it and that looks very phorical to me, and I'm missing the meta here. Luther calls for the secular authorities to burn down all the synagogues and schools, and what will not burn should be covered with earth, so that not a stone or a piece of slag of it should be seen for all eternity. That is called genocide. Luther called for the genocide of the Jews, the literal erasure of a culture. This is genocide. The man was a pig. And that's the nicest thing I can say about Martin Luther. Okay? The Jews' houses must be destroyed, and they should be put under one roof like the gypsies. The Talmud and the prayer book should be destroyed and Jewish teachers banned. They should be prevented from using the roads. That is Sharia. That is 100% Islamic Sharia. Okay? Usury should be banned and the Jews forced to undertake physical labor. Instead, assets from money lending should be confiscated, steal their money, and used to support Jews who converted. This was a program of complete cultural eradication, and Luther meant it. Don't tell me it was metaphorical, because believe me, it was phorical. Luther's anti-Semitism then reached a crescendo of physical revulsion. He imagined Jews kissing and praying to the devil's excrement. The devil has emptied his stomach again and again. That is a true relic, which the Jews want to, and those who want to be a Jew, kiss, eat, drink, and worship. And in an inverted baptismal exorcism, the devil fills the mouth, nose, and ears of the Jews with filth. So this is a baptism in excrement, pig's excrement. He stuffs and squirts them so full that it overflows and swims out of every place, pure devil's filth. Yes, it tastes so good to their hearts, and they guzzle it like sows. Where's this delusion that Jesus is Armenian coming from? We'll get to that in a moment. So, whipping himself into a frenzy, Luther invokes Judas, the ultimate Jew, when Judas hanged himself so that his guts ripped. And as happens to those who are hanged, his bladder burst. Then the Jews had their golden cans and silver bowls ready to catch the Judas piss with the other relics, the poop. And afterwards, together, they ate the shit and drank, from which they got such sharp sight that they were able to see such complex glosses in Scripture. So, do you understand? Then people are going to go, well, Lloyd, except for that, Luther was really holy, he was a wonderful man, and his theology is 100%. The guy's a fucking genius. Okay? To which my answer is, I'm going to have to politely disagree with you here, because, yeah. Now, this summary here provides only a sampling of Luther's hate-filled language. Multiple passages in his 1543 writings against the Jews are equally as vile. Was Luther alone in his Jew hatred among the reformers? I'm not actually sure. Probably not. I doubt it very much. So, yeah, Martin Luther was a tyrant. He would have been a complete totalitarian. Yeah. All right. So guys, do you agree with Luther on this point? And except for this, Luther's a great guy, right? I mean, except for what the nasty things Hitler did. Hitler was just awesome, right? Let's continue. What was Ariosophy? And this is Madame Blavatsky. Ariosophy was an occult movement developed in Germany in the late 19th, early 20th century. It combined theosophy, Hinduism, and Germanic mythology. So this is where we get the whole Hindu link to the swastika, right? And it was heavily influenced by the writings of a man called Guido van List and a guy called Jörg Lanz von Liebenfels. Okay? Now, it was heavily anti-Christian. Ariosophy was heavily anti-Christian and focused on the supposed ancient Aryan or Nordic race, which it believed to be the source of spiritual and cultural power in the world. And that's why Jesus was an Aryan, because this was the best race in the world, the greatest race. They were probably so white. Well, I don't know, like Muhammad. It combined German nationalism and racism with the cult notions borrowed from the theosophy of Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. The Ariosophists prophesied and vindicated a coming era of German world rule, describing a prehistoric golden age, an entirely imaginary, literally imaginary golden age, when wise Gnostic priesthoods had expounded occult racist doctrines and ruled over a superior and racially pure society. The Ariosophists Martin Ackerman, you're right. Once saved, always saved. So once you're saved, you can fall away from Christ. You can become an evil pig like Luther, but it's okay because once upon a time you, good point. I should have thought of that. And then the Ariosophists founded secret religious orders dedicated to the revival of the lost esoteric knowledge and racial virtue of the ancient Germans and the corresponding creation of a new pan-German empire. Right? So the early Nazi party had sponsors, right? And they had a newspaper and they had a symbol traced to the Thule Society, not to the freaking Hindus. Please just leave those guys alone for now, right? So, and the Germanenorden, and thus to the ideas of Guido van List. Now, Himmler officially patronized Karl Maria Willigut, whose prehistorical speculations were rooted in the ideas of List and his Armanist paganism. The fantasies of the Ariosophists concerned elitism and purity, right? And a sense of mission in the face of conspiracies, and the Jews were running a conspiracy, right? and also millenarian visions of a felicitous national future. So understand, this is where the whole Aryan idea comes from. It's literally fiction. It's literally fantasy, right? And the enthusiasm of the Aryan occultists for Nazism, and these occultists always were into this kind of weirdness, has already been noted, and some of the beliefs of Adolf Hitler and their possible debt to Ariosophy have been suggested. People deny it because Hitler was the good guy, right? The Nazi movement was based on fantasies, right? Islam is based on fantasies. Gnosticism is based on fantasies, designed to relieve acute feelings of anxiety, defeat, and demoralization. Don't forget, after the defeat of World War I, the fall of the whole German Empire, things were bad, okay? People wanted to be inspired, but they utilized this and abused it. So the chiliastic meaning 1,000-year Reich. There would be a 1,000-year Reich, derived from the biblical idea of a 1,000-year return of Jesus on earth before we all go to heaven, right? Which is also related, you'll find historically related to millenarianism as well as Anabaptism, which I believe is a Protestant belief. So yeah, thanks Protestants. And this was a promise of a Third Reich, which echoed a medieval prophecy and remained a potent metaphor in the fantasy world of many Germans who bemoaned the lost war. Okay, so they had made up a fantasy to make them feel better, right? Yes, Proverbs 25:2. So George L. Moss noted that theosophy typified the wave of anti-positivism sweeping Europe at the end of the century, and observed that it made a deeper impression in Germany. For some reason, this made a huge impression in Germany, more so than in other European countries. Although a foreign hybrid containing Egyptian revivalism, American spiritualism, and Hindu beliefs, it was very much in vogue in Austria and Germany. And those are the countries that Hitler lived in, of course. Yeah, they wanted an origin story, Joel Thomas. Exactly. Think about Islam. It's got a completely fantastical origin story. It's completely bogus, right? So much of this story is just absolute made-up nonsense. It's a coping mechanism, exactly, right? So sponsors, yeah, Nicodemus, yeah, the sponsors. Let's try and look at some of that. Yeah, it's anti-Christian, exactly. So, okay. But Luther was a good guy. He was forced to translate the Bible into German to keep him secret from the Inquisition. Forget that. Yeah. So yeah, we should only look at the good things. Guido Karl Anton List, who died in 1919, was an Austrian occultist, journalist, playwright, and novelist. So Petro G. Cracker says, I have a question. If I show this to people of evangelical belief here in Germany, how do you think they will get this kind of information? I don't want to cause conflict. Look, sadly, truth is going to cause conflict. This kind of information is going to cause conflict. Sadly, the information that I present on this channel is contentious. There is no other way to describe it. Not everyone's going to like what I have to say here. And it's not like I'm trying to go out to annoy people, but these are things that make me angry. I'm speaking of my annoyance, and this kind of information is unfortunately controversial. It is going to upset people. Right, so he expounded a modern pagan new religious movement known as Wotanism, Wotan, right, which he claimed was the revival of the religion of the ancient German race, which included Ariosophical teachings that he termed Armanism, which was paganism. He elaborated a racial religion premised on the concept of renouncing Christianity. So here we've got another influence that renounces Christianity that's linked to all of these crazy Nazis, right? And returning to a priesthood who were heirs of the Sun King. Okay, great, let's go all Egyptian and stuff. Born to a wealthy middle-class family in Vienna, he abandoned his family's Roman Catholic faith. And here's where the atheists are going to go, he was a Christian! Right, just like Hitler, right? And he abandoned his faith in childhood, just like Hitler did, devoting himself to the pre-Christian god Wotan. As you know, Wotan is in chapter 3 of Paul's Romans. Yeah, it's in chapter 3 of Romans, verse 9. They speak of Wotan, how everyone has to bow down to Wotan, right? New Testament. Right, the pre-Christian god Wotan blended with Blavatsky's theosophy. So understand, these people have no problem with contradictions. They have they have no logos. They reject logos. Christianity brings the logos. God is logic. So logic and rationalism is Christian, is entirely Christian. It's not atheist. Atheism isn't coherent. I'll be doing something on that as well soon. I've been busy working on notes on atheism because it's just completely a joke. But it's not the historical stuff, but a logical analysis of atheism, which is complete trash. Right, but understand, they are willing to blend things which have no concern. So they're going to put squares and circles together and say, yeah, those things work just fine. So the esoteric doctrine, Armanism, was concerned with the secret mysteries of the gnosis, again, more Gnosticism, reserved for the initiated elite, while the exoteric doctrine, the exoteric, the external, as opposed to the secret, private, elite, internal, Wotanism, took the form of popular myths intended for the lower social classes. So you had two. This religion was clearly a pyramid. On the top, you had the secret knowledge with the leaders, and then you had this broader, vaguer, secret, no, not so secret, but exoteric knowledge for the public. Islam for the masses, because I've spoken to you before about Islam for the masses. Let me catch up with the comments. Plenty of peeps who follow the channel learning new things about their own religious background that is not nice. I know. I'm learning things. I am from a Protestant background. I've got bishops in my family. All right? Bishops. Okay? I have several priests. Okay? And I'm looking at the Anglican Church and I'm going, this is insane. How do you think it's making me feel? Understand? I'm just, look, these are the facts. To my knowledge, I am not lying to you. These are facts. I mean, this is what is corroborated across so many sources. This is not propaganda. As far as I know, these are the historical facts. So yeah, it's disturbing to me too, but I'm just putting it out there. Okay? So yeah, living a lie feels the same as living the truth till you find out the lie. Yeah. So just an aside, have your sessions on atheism affected your atheist viewership? Yeah, I think they've all buggered off, to be quite honest. I don't think they're comfortable. Nuria Khan has not invited me back. So what does that say? Okay, so he influenced groups like the Reichshammerbund and the Germanenorden, and they were very racist, and through these exerted an influence on the Nazi Party and the SS. After World War II, his work continued to influence an array of Ariosophic and heathen practitioners in Europe, Australia, and North America. So his things have lived on. These bad ideas have lived on. Okay? So, now, we've mentioned here the initiated elite and the exoteric doctrine, the Wotanism. In Islam, you've got the Ibara. In mysticism, it is the literal language, which is suitable for exoteric topics, right? In contrast to the coded language of Ishara. This is identical. This is Gnosticism. Islamic religion is Gnostic. It says so bluntly. And they've got the same structure here. Different structures for people. Are you leaning towards becoming Catholic? You know, if I had to honestly think about it, and when I look at the history and I read through the early church fathers, then yes, I would say that would seem to be a logical outcome. That would seem to be a logical outcome. I have looked very briefly into the history of the Anglican Church, and the Anglican Church has not had one single sort of straight road with doctrine. They've been all over the place. They've been like a drunk driver on a highway. Okay, so if the doctrine is not consistent, and again, when people confronted me with the whole idea of Jews, right? Look, if that offends you and you don't like that idea, then you have to leave the channel if you don't like the fact that I'm just being honest. Okay, I'm being blunt with all of you. But do understand that I heard lots of stories about Jews, so I went and read the Talmud for 3 months. I actually literally read the Talmud for 3 months, spent dozens and dozens and dozens of hours on it, and people were lying about the Jews. Then I went, when every time a Protestant, unfortunately, tells me something about the Catholic Church, I actually go and do the research. Anytime someone talks any poop in the comments, I actually go and read up on that. I go and follow that up, right? And 99 times out of 100, it's a lie. It's some sort of nonsense that's being told. It's very blunt, okay? So then, Ishara, a gesture, a sign, indication in rhetoric. It's the technical meaning of allusion, subtle signs. In mysticism, it is the esoteric language of the inexpressible mystical experience, right? And this is something that is reserved for the higher scholars, okay? Someone asked me, I know you have asked me, Martin, would I consider orthodoxy? And man, when I look at orthodoxy, I know very little. I mean, on a scale from 1 to 100, I know 1. But there's a couple of things I've noted about orthodoxy that make me shake my head. It's like, maybe not. Yeah, so Protestant believer. Yeah, your dad went back and forth from Catholic to Anglican, but ended up on Catholic and started one of the biggest Catholic churches in my area. Yeah. So look, it's not because I'm in Poland. It's 95% Catholic. I go to the Catholic Church. They speak Polish. I don't speak Polish. They could be talking Martian or Klingon for all I know. So it's not that. It's, but yeah, it's just that when I look at the history, it's not because I'm going there, because, I do go to church, but yeah, I have no idea what the heck they're saying, so it's all Greek to me. Voltaire's your grandfather's ancestor. Dude, I wouldn't tell people about that, because Voltaire was not a good man. Yeah, divorce him. Okay, the voices spoke to me. Later, Liszt worked out essentially a clairvoyant reconstruction of the distant past. So he clairvoyantly worked out this view, okay, clairvoyantly, right? Used his clairvoyance, the voices spoke to him. He elaborated a vast mythology of an ancient Wotanist priesthood, the Armanenschaft. They supposedly held sway in Europe until the Christian conversion, but were now clandestine. They were operating secretly, perpetuating the Aryan law through a small elite. And he was one of these elite. He was one of the great elite. Lanz was disinterested in Listian recreations of the German past, but he did have his own candidate for an Aryan secret priesthood. Do you know who were part of the Aryan secret priesthood and had survived into the modern era? The Knights Templar, a Catholic order suppressed for heresy in the 1300s. I'm not interested in the standard story on the Templars. That's probably not quite true either. He founded his Ordo Novo Templi, Order of the New Temple, or the New Templars, around 1907 in the medieval castle of Burg Werfenstein above the Danube. List believed that Christianity had suppressed and persecuted the Armanenschaft. Historically, there is literally zero evidence for this. Okay, zero. The man made this up. So the Armanenschaft were the ancient Germanic priesthood, making the priest kings into warlocks. So they said, you guys are witches, we got to burn you. And the old faith was considered the instrument of Satan. So basically, they're now playing the victim card, and they're fighting back against oppression, just like the French Revolution was fighting back against the oppression of the Catholic Church, which is, and to use Deduz's very accurate scientific term, it's BS, or basically science. Okay, so yeah, this story is basically science. It's BS, complete basically science. Okay, right. So to finish this and move on to the next topic. So hopefully I'll answer the question about the whole Aryan stuff. So list theosophy and nonsense. So Christian conversion represented the worst and most vicious assault on national integrity in Germany. So Christianity had come into Germany and destroyed the country, wiped out these people from Atlantis. Okay, and those who persisted in the old confession were burned as heretics or witches. So List's polemic against Christianity charged that the church had demonized the literally imaginary national priesthood. Okay? Theosophy is a syncretic faith. In other words, they will just slap things together that do not belong. It's like making a salad and then tossing in tomatoes because tomatoes are a vegetable. Man, you don't, making a fruit salad and throwing in tomatoes, because as you know, man, tomatoes might be a fruit, but you don't stick them in fruit salad. Okay? He combined ancient religious ideas and new concepts borrowed from Darwin and modern science, and it offered an appealing mixture of ideas to individuals whose traditional outlook had been upset by the discrediting of Orthodox religion, by the very rationalizing and demystifying progress of science, and by the impact, or shall we say, atheistic science, right, scientism, and by the impact of rapid social and economic change in the late 19th century. And again, we can tie a lot of that back to Luther, who shook the foundations of the church and had people doubt. Theosophy is best understood within a wider protest movement in Germany known as Lebensreform, or life reform. This movement represented a middle-class attempt to cope with, as someone said, it's coping, to cope with the ills of modern life, deriving from the growth of the cities and industry. And we can call that socialism. That's definitely socialism. Okay? So let's see. That's why the Latin Mass is the Mass. The Latin Mass is the same everywhere. This new church is more Protestant than Catholic. Yeah. So let's see. Kakia, ancient Greek, meaning bad and evil. A kakistocracy. There's actually a word called kakistocracy. And the word kak in Afrikaans means, well, this thing that Luther liked to write about. Yeah, kaki means poop. Yeah, exactly. So Hermeticism. So let's go on a few more minutes. So Hermeticism is a religious way of thinking with roots in the Western esoteric tradition. Okay? And it is based on Gnosticism, Hermetic treatises on alchemy, magic, Neoplatonism, and the Kabbalah, all originating in the Eastern Mediterranean area during the first few centuries AD. Now, this is not a in-depth jump into the history of Hermeticism, because I know you can have story A. No, Lloyd, Hermeticism is actually A, and then you can go to story B. Well, actually, no. Hermeticism is this. And yeah, so look, trust me, the story of Hermeticism is all over the place. There's no one story. It's hysterically funny. It makes no sense whatsoever. And you can just make up whatever you like and say that's Hermetic for the most part. Okay? There's certain commonalities, and then there's things that people just made up. So guys, on this score, I'm going to go a couple of minutes. And if you do like this, like, share, subscribe. If you do like this, I will ask you, please support the channel. Again, I'm not trying to offend anyone, but, this is the history as I know it, and these are the elements of history that are hidden because they're uncomfortable. And I believe that is untruthful if you are believing something when it's a half story, when it's not the full truth, and you don't have the full information to make a decision with. It's all nonsense, exactly. They think they have knowledge. So the Gnostic sects disappeared in the 4th century, but their ideas, they're still around. They're around today. They're stronger than ever. Right? The ideas inspired the dualistic Manichaean religion of the 2nd century and also the Hermetica. You'll find Manichaean ideas in Martin Luther. I'll discuss that in the future. His Manichaean leanings, his Gnostic leanings, his obvious Gnostic leanings. So these Greek texts were composed in Egypt between the 3rd and the 5th century and developed a synthesis of Gnostic ideas, Neoplatonism, that's AD, right, not BC, and Kabbalistic theosophy, right? So theosophy offered an integrated view of the world in which the present was understood in terms of a remote historical past. It's funny until you watch the output of such groups in the world. Yeah, they're around today and they are very active. They are pushing hard, right? So this imaginary past was legitimized. Okay, this imaginary past, somehow this glorious past legitimized a variety of social, political, and cultural ideals. Just like the French Revolution, those atheists had this glorious imaginary Roman Greek past that legitimized their barbarity and depravity, right? So this legitimized racism, magic, elitism. All of these were negations of the modern world, negations of the Christian view of the world, right? So at best, these occult beliefs might bolster and justify resistance to processes of social change. They wanted to turn back the clock to a glorious time before Christianity, an anti-Christian phase, because Christianity messed up the world. At worst, they provided a fantasy world in respect of which the present could be lamented, complained about, and the possessors of the true gnosis could comfort themselves in their assumed superior wisdom. These were children, right, complaining. So, sorry, Vegetal. Sorry you missed most of the stream, but your mom is important, and I'm glad you took the time out to look after her. So, Rachel Zatsevich, to cover is to conceal, and that's usually wicked. The wicked agenda since day one. Thank you. That's a really profound statement. Yeah, I'm just trying to rip the Band-Aid off, or just trying to look, these are the facts. This is the other side. Why are we not told this in history? We get one side of the story, but not the other. That's a bias. That is manipulation. So Theosophy thinks there's a god called Sanat Kumara ruling from Venus, more powerful than Jesus. So yeah, dude, they believe a bunch of things. So the Nazi crusade to prevent the apocalypse. I'll go one more slide after this. So basically, the Nazis were trying to prevent the apocalypse, or to bring it about, depending how you look at it, right? The appeal of Nazism was based on powerful fantasies designed to relieve acute feelings of anxiety, defeat, and demoralization. And someone said it earlier, it was cope, right? An anti-German conspiracy of Jews and their minions was threatening the very survival of the German nation. The chiastic promise of a Third Reich echoed medieval Joachite prophecy, that's Joachim of Fiore, and remained a potent metaphor in the fantasy world of so many Germans who bemoaned the lost war. The harsh terms of the peace settlement and the misery and chaos of the early Weimar Republic fostered myths of plots and visions of a new Reich. They wanted to restore themselves to glory. The Nazi crusade was indeed essentially religious in its adoption of apocalyptic beliefs. My bad. So the Nazi crusade was a religious crusade, right? It adopted apocalyptic beliefs and fantasies, including a new Jerusalem and the needful extermination of inferiors. Now, hold on. There's another religion that also established a new Jerusalem. It's called something, a new Jerusalem called Mecca, right? And they needed to do jihad to exterminate the inferior Kaffir. Do you guys see a similarity here? Ariosophy provided a model case study in Nazi religiosity. So, atheists must be willfully ignorant, willfully stupid if they think that this is Christianity. Do you understand? All of this craziness, all of this weirdness, this fantasy, right? Now, they can say Christianity is fantasy, that the Bible is fantasy, but it's not this fantasy. Understand, these are two vastly different stories. Nazi jihad, exactly. Islamic jihad, Nazi jihad, same ideas. So yeah, people are willfully stupid. So I had to go through that long song and dance just so you could understand that this was part of the Nazi belief. This is nowhere near anything vaguely biblical and Christian. So, yeah, okay. Right, so the Nazi warrior messiah and the caliphate. Last slide, guys, I'll finish here. Chiliastic belief refers to a millenarian struggle, 1000, it's Greek for 1000. Have you guys learned anything? Has this been useful? Have I made sense? Have I bored you to death? Or has this actually been enlightening? Have you taken something away from this? Rachel Zetsevich says, I'm just coming into agreement with your reason for doing your work. It is essential and ever-present truth in a world that loves lies. Well, thank you. I really do appreciate that. I do. I mean, I come across too many people telling me things that I don't believe are true based on the facts, based on the research, and this is the other side of the story that we're not told. So, yeah, just the truth. So, let me see. So, it refers to a millenarian struggle that will lead to the creation of a righteous pan-German order held by various revolutionaries in Europe. So List believed in the imminent destruction of the satanic antagonist. Oh my, that sounds like the Muslims are gonna, they're gonna kill, oh good grief. And they demanded the annihilation of the great international party, that's the great conspiracy, right? To enable the Aryo-Germans to enter the promised land of happiness and prosperity. Oh boy, sounds a little religious. List's belief in an international war, oh my god, a global jihad, to fulfill his demand for a more visible, tangible, and anti-German enemy than the imaginary Great International Party is an example of chiliastic bellicosity. Bellicosity is basically you are belligerent and are looking to go to war or to fight. So understand when Hitler said earlier, if the Jew did not exist, we would have to invent him. They would have to make an enemy. Okay? And this, I believe, is, I'm not sure this is your Achim of Fiore, but this is the apocalypse of Jesus Christ. Okay, and finally, I'll end here, right? The Joachite prophecy is a Western apocalyptic prophecy that predicts a new age of redemption after a first woeful and evil age. The prophecy presents a dualistic and linear time scheme that views the present pessimistically and the future as fantastic. It predicts that current issues will worsen, right, leading to an ultimate catastrophe marked by violent climatic changes. Global warming, global cooling, climate change. Oh my! So yeah, does this sound familiar? Does this sound vaguely familiar? Soon we're going to have shocks. Shocknado is going to hit us tonight, right? There'll be drought, earthquakes, and fire. Okay, so there'll be violent climatic changes. The end times will come through violent climatic changes. A divine warrior leader will suddenly intervene, a guy called Hitler. To liberate his chosen people from their affliction, he will bind and destroy the evil tyrant and establish a divine and incorruptible kingdom on earth. And List's vision of a pan-German empire was based on this. So Joachim of Fiore, ultimately a heretic, right? His ideas were very popular. And his ideas, unfortunately, again, influenced a guy known as Lucifer. So, yeah, so Kush says, it is the propaganda they are feeding me at uni. Interesting, at university. Okay, the beat number says Hitler's actual favorite religion is Islam, as he professed in several of his literary works. Adolf Hitler believed that Islam would have made the German nation more ruthless and bloodthirsty. Yes, he did say things like that. Notice the need for an enemy, Germans versus Jews, Islam versus Nejas Kafir. Exactly. Sounds like Greta. Metaphysical Joker, you just won the internet. Yes, excellent. Yeah, these are all Shark Attack 1990s cartoons. So, wow, blown away by this. Ricky Brown, thank you. So, how dare you? Yes. Okay, let me just go through the comments, make sure I haven't missed anything important. Gnosticism never left. That's villainous, and that is true. Yes. Okay. Survival of the fittest also, Lord, according to evolution. Yes, when I do my talk on Hitler and Darwin, we're going to see how bad it gets. You have, good grief. Darwin was, he has blood on his hands. That man has millions and millions of lives on his hands. That man caused death. Quite bluntly, he caused depravity and death for people. Okay, so let me see. The alphabet people are funny, but they want to indoctrinate kids and chop their bits off. Exactly, and they want to do other things to kids too, right? Okay, so Rachel, amongst other reasons, reasons for agreeing with me. I know what I say is contentious. I'm not trying to be deliberately contentious, but this information is clearly, it's got analog to what we experience today. And yeah, do we ignore it? Why are we ignoring it when it's got so much relevance in terms of our religious beliefs and social beliefs. Yeah, the Momas were not strong enough for Hitler. Yeah, they weren't racially pure. So he didn't believe they were racially pure. So was Hitler a Muslim, or did he only see Islam as a tool? They did view Islam as a tool. I don't think he was a Muslim. Look, some have said he was an atheist, and lots of people argue about that, but atheism is a religion, and atheism has spawned religions, right? Many atheists, many devout atheists followed a religion that they created. Hitler did claim to be a materialist, right? Atheists are materialists. So, you could. I think if you look at the information correctly in that way, you could make the claim that he was an atheist, right? Because atheism is incoherent as well, right? So yes. Was he a Muslim? No, I don't think he was a Muslim. Did he steal Muslim ideas? I would think so. Yeah, and let's see. Let me see if I've missed anything. Cows tearing holes in the ozone layer. Yeah, we got to kill 200,000 cows now, right? So Hotus, okay, so yeah. So guys, let me see. I will end here. Let me just check that I have anything. Okay, so guys, if you do like this, if you enjoy it, please smash the like button. Do share the material. Hopefully you've learned something. Hopefully you've gained something. Hopefully it's relevant. I know today was very sentence heavy, very word heavy, but hopefully the story fills in details that you did not get in history, you did not get at university, you did not get at school, and you certainly did not get at church. Everything is an assault on the church. Everything is an assault on Christ. Everything is an assault on Christianity. All of these things. Everything is designed to destroy and replace Christianity. Right? So you need to know this. You need to know your enemy. You need to fight back. The truth is very powerful. Learn the truth. Speak the truth. All right? Big Personal says, hey Lord, I used to love your channel a lot and I still love you as a brother in Christ. I've been to many channels, both Christian and atheist, who don't ban people who disagree with them. So yeah, look, I'm not here. That's my choice. I am not going to listen to people post their propaganda. I have no interest in your propaganda. I have none. Absolutely none. Okay? So if you're going to post propaganda, I am not going to have you around. My plan and my interest is in promoting what I have to say. And these are the facts. That's why I provide my references. I provide my sources. Everything that I have, I can provide you the links. Let me go here. Okay? I am not an American. I don't follow American ideology, right? I don't follow that kind of what seems to be very weak morality. So I have my archive. You guys can look here. Everything is under Nazism. You can follow that. Okay? So if someone is going to consistently what you disagree with, yes, when people lie to me, when people are going to be giving me a story that is clearly ongoing propaganda, if something has been corrected and you're going to continuously contest it with lies, what is clearly demonstrated to be lies, then you are no longer making a mistake. You are lying to me. And besides, when somebody's not arguing in good faith, there's no way you're going to be changing their mind. So sure, if I'm wrong, by all means, right, start a channel, tell people about your story, right? Do you want to argue with me about Islam? I know Islam better than anybody else I know when it comes to the Sharia, right? Prove me wrong, because it's in the books. I quote the books. I quote the authors. So, yeah, up to you. People have, I listen to Protestants, and I say Protestants because, I'm still a Protestant, but the fact is that when people talk about the Catholic Church, it's all lies. 99% of what I've been told about the Catholic Church is simply bluntly lies. Why would I entertain it? It's like someone trying to convince me that 1 + 1 is equal to 3. Why would I even listen to that? And I can quote mine the sources. Quote mining in your terms is that if I say 1 + 1 is equal to 2, you're going to say that's cherry picking. Okay? Because you're going to want a 5-page essay to explain how we arrived at 1 + 1. No, 1 + 1 is 2. There is no arguing about that. There's no need to discuss it. So let me see. I am South African, yeah. And when you have the sources, you can go and check them yourself. Yes. I don't know who Eric Manning is, and I don't care. You see, I don't care. I absolutely, positively don't care. Oh, they got violent. So the Muslims got violent with Bob and Chris at Speaker's Corner on the weekend. Okay, quote mining is taken out of context. Okay, again, like I said, I don't care. I have no interest. I have literally zero interest in your point of view. I've looked at it, and I'll be honest, I thought it's crap. Okay? And because I disagree with it, I have no idea, no interest in debating it or supporting it. Guys, I have to go. That is, okay? Till next time, guys. Take